Hello and welcome to CATLive, where we're featuring CATraxx. I'm Doug Williams, and let's get started. Hopefully everything is going well on your end, and I think I can start seeing comments now. I think I figured that out. So with no further ado, first off, let's create a new CATraxx database. Elsa had an idea that we should just try to keep it very focused, and so let's do that. So to create a new CATraxx database, we go to File, New Database, and we have our templates in here. We have the simple and standard. Those that normally come with CATraxx. You'll also see another one that has my name in it. That's one that I created, and we'll cover that in another session. But let's just create a new database with the standard setup, and we will call it CATLive. And so now we have a new database that is just purely, it's empty. So let's get some data in there. And to do that, let's reopen our original one. And let's filter down to just a particular set of records. And I want to make sure I only get what is in this particular list. So I'm going to mark these items that are in this list. So we're going to mark in list, and you can see that the check mark has been applied. So now let's go to File, Transfer. We don't have to be in the database that we're going to. We can do that right here. So we're going to go from my standard database, and let's select the new CATLive database. And then we have some other options down below. And lookup tables, they are by default checked, but because this tick box here, lookup tables, is not checked, these won't be used. But we are going to do albums and the albums that are marked. We won't do any of the others. We'll just leave those blank. So if we click Start, and yes, and so now those albums have been transferred. So to make sure, we'll go over to that CATLive database, and now we have some data that is in there. Okay, I'm going to unmark all. Now, CATraxx has lots of features in, and I have been using it for, well, since 2001. And I know a lot, I've used a lot, but I actually learned something new very recently that CATraxx does. And so you see that with that transfer, I brought over all my Glen Campbell 45s and some other ones that I had marked that we'll go over through in a bit. But you'll notice that the Glen Campbell and Bobby Gentry are way at the bottom. Well, and that happens to be because that's, you know, a second artist, and so CATraxx will sort it that particular way. But if it's a particular group or artist that you don't want it to sort individually, say you want Bobby Gentry not to sort by itself or to be a separate group, you want it to be intertwined with the regular artist. If you just put an asterisk there, and we'll do next, and we'll put an asterisk here, click OK, and now you see it sorted at the bottom of Glen Campbell. Now I'm going to click the refresh button, and the artist sort, it ignores that artist that you put an asterisk on. So it kind of sorts it in where the regular titles should be. And let me, oh, I don't have my default sort in here. That's why it looks a little weird. But with that, you can see that it resorts it, and that sort ignores it, and it can put it within the artist that you do want it sorted. So it works well with, say, the group Yes. I believe they did some work with an orchestra for one of their orchestral type albums. And so it's possible that in your artist line, you would have Yes and the London Philharmonic. And say you don't want it to sort with the London Philharmonic in there. You can just asterisk that, and it would just sort it all by the Yes artist. That's something that I learned fairly new. And also with that, if I go into the lookup view and go into the artist role, and we also have in that box where you put the asterisk, you can put an artist role in there, either featuring versus with. That's a large number of things that you can put in. If you did not want CATraxx to sort by that particular role, there is a tick box, exclude from sort order. So you can tick that, click OK, and I believe you will have to regenerate the artist sort, but it doesn't take that into consideration when you add it to the list, so to speak. Okay, excuse me. I thought I could see people's comments, but I'm not seeing any in the one screen that Facebook provides to me. So let's just keep moving forward. So we've talked about excluding the artist and excluding the role. Now, one of the things with John Mellencamp or any other artist, he had multiple names. And now this is just something that I do. You can do it totally different. That's the flexibility of CATraxx. If we go into the edit the column, and I want to uncheck the show sort by, I put in the actual artist that is listed on the album. So I know that Pink Houses, it was recorded as John Cougar Mellencamp. The Scarecrow album was recorded as John Mellencamp. Well, and then it says down there, John Cougar. So I have some even inconsistencies with my album, my data. But you can see that there is some flexibility with that it still sorts it that way, but it can display an artist in a way that might reflect his particular history. Let me go over to the artist person and go down to John Mellencamp. So I filled out a lot of information in here. This is the next record. And one of the things you can do is you can relate it back to the primary artist if you're so inclined. And then there's the other one. Okay. So there's some flexibility with that. At least this is how I do it. You can do it however you like. As long, I've always said, as long as you're consistent with how you do it. Because ultimately, this is a reference point for you to find your what's ever in your collection, and that you can look it up and then go find the physical media. And since we're in the artist, I also wanted to point out, you'll notice some of these are bold and some of them are not. those are related to whether or not the artist tick box has been ticked. And that comes from where you originally entered this artist. So in this case, for Kathy or for Dennis McCarthy, I have some track that has him listed as the artist. But if I untick it, you'll notice that Dennis McCarthy is no longer bold. So there's some correlation to that. At some point, he's listed as the artist performer and not just a songwriter like some of these others in this test database are listed. So let's go back to the artist, or excuse me, the album. Another thing I like to mention is backups. Now, last week I did go through how to back up just generally, but I also want to kind of talk about what is important to back up. Your data, that's pretty obvious, but what else is important in here is your license file that you get when you register with CATraxx. So if I go into the CATraxx program folder, there is a CATraxx.license file. It might also be called CATraxx.lic. That file needs to be backed up so that you have your license for CATraxx. And for me, how I have things organized, again, it's very flexible with that. Well, flexible to a degree. In the program folder, I have the bare minimum for what CATraxx needs. I have the programs here. All my data I put out into a separate drive, and in this particular case, it's an SSD drive, so very fast, and it technically is on another machine, actually the machine that's in the record room. And in that drive, I have it broken out to the various programs with CATraxx. And I also have an install folder that is backed up on a regular basis, because you should always keep it of that setup. And then with the various programs I have broke out. And in CATraxx, I also have it broken out by the various features. And so I have an image folder, I have a forms folder, files, an Explorer templates, and you'll see that there's a number of them there. This one is the default template that CATraxx provides. I've done some modifications, and so I put it into a separate Explorer templates folder, so I know that that's my templates. And if there's an update or you have to reinstall, it just puts it into this, and it doesn't overwrite my particular templates. And this one happens to be another gentleman that I've been helping out. This was his particular templates. So you can have multiple folders for all the different templates. Now, there could be some that are very similar, but the overall data that it actually takes is very minimal. An export folder, the reports, some videos, the search, other templates that you can have. I mentioned earlier about the database templates. I have a particular folder for those. And then in here, you'll see a number of DAT files. Those are some data files that CATraxx uses to keep track of the auto-organize features, to keep track of the auto-organize for the image files. I do have a copy of the CATraxx license in here. And also for like your report designer, your search and sites and statistics. They all have These files are all available and separate that you should back up, so that if a catastrophic event happens, you didn't lose all those custom sites that you did. So it's a good idea to organize this. So now when I back up, all I have to back up is my drive E for my CATraxx information. Backups are always good. Matter of fact, just before I went live, I did back up to my local drive, my E data, so that in case something happened, I could actually just restore everything back to was prior to this go live. Minimize that. One of the other things that is capable with this is having multiple CATraxx open at one time. Now, why would you want that? Say you have a particular database that you have some information in, but you want to compare it to another CATraxx database. How do you do that? Well, on your taskbar with CATraxx open, you can right-click and then hold down your control key and left-click. And what will happen is another session of CATraxx will open. So now you see that I have my CATLive database that we just created, and also my standard database that's been created. So now we can compare certain data that is in both databases. And now since we're here in mine, let's do the next step. I want to select the wants. I want to unmark all and then just mark those in the list. Another feature with CATraxx that is often confusing is down in the lower left corner, you have the series of 4 numbers and to what they mean. The first number is what record number you are on in that list that's currently open. That second number is the records in this list. The third number is the number of marked records. So as I unmark a record, you can see that that third number gets smaller. And as I remark them, it increments. And then the fourth number is the total numbers of records in that database. So I want to transfer these over to the newly created database. And I also want to do the form layouts. I'm sorry, excuse me, the views setup, so that I have my default views over there. And so yes, and that will transfer. While that is working, let's go back, right click, and then control left click CATraxx and open up. I want to close that database and open up this database. I have one just for Reader's Digest box sets. I'm not sure if that's something unique to the USA or if Reader's Digest albums were available outside of the Americas. But one of the things I wanted to go through is we've used the Grace Note CDDB feature, and we probably use the Discogs manual query. There is another way to enter in track information that's not quite as glamorous as it is through the feature, but it is something that is available. It requires a little more work, but I've highlighted this particular Reader's Digest box set, and we can do a site search. So we're going to do sites and then search Google. And then coming up on Google, it does a search and it actually finds it in Discogs. But let's say that the title that you're looking for isn't in Discogs. So you can go to some other site and look for a site that has the tracks listed. And eBay, I've done that from some for some albums, and without looking for the particular one, I found one ahead of time. And while this isn't the exact title, it is one that will give us the idea of what I'm about to show you. And so they do list the tracks. So let's select and highlight, copy the track list, and we'll open up a text editor. I like using Notepad++, but anything that's text-based will work for you. Right-click, paste, and so now we have that list in a Notepad text editor. So I'm going to delete the spaces. And then I'm going to remove the track numbers. And this is one of the things I like about Notepad++. If I can Alt and then click and hold, I can just select that segment of the list and delete it. And do the same with this one. And so now we have a fairly clean list. What's nice about this particular list is it has the title and the artist, and very important, at least for this demonstration, is that it has a delimiter. In this case, it's a dash. This isn't always 100%, but especially if you have a large track listing, it does save a lot of time. So I'm going to copy that list. I'm going to go back to CATraxx to that easy listening country session and bring that back. And now remember, this is not one that this database was one of my non-CATLive ones, so it has my custom form in it, but the features are still the same. So I'm going to track, paste track list. So remember, I have that listing of tracks copied into the computer's memory, so I'm going to paste it. And so now it's going to paste the 20 tracks to the album. And notice it puts it in there. It did the capitalization, but if you also look at it, it lists it all on one track. Not preferred, but they have a cleanup. So track, data cleanup, extract artist from title. And is that title by artist title, or is it by title artist? It's by title artist, so we'll click that, and now it's asking what that separator is. That dash is very important. And so now it's separated the track title to the and the track artist. So now if we open it up, we can see that the artist has been extracted from the title. And so it becomes a lot easier to enter in data that you can, they call it scraping, but so you can scrape particular data from some websites. And with some of the Reader's Digests that I have done in the past, thankfully, somebody on eBay or some other website has entered in the 20 plus tracks, and so I can easily copy, paste, edit in here, and then copy and then paste into CATraxx. So that is the feature using the paste track list and then using data cleanup. There's some other features in here that you can do. Some of these come from when you read the tags from MP3 files or other audio files, and you have the ability to swap artist and title if by chance you had messed it up, which I have done several times. But data cleanup in track, that's what that's for. And also, you can also extract version from title. In some titles that you download, you'll have a remix in parentheses. If you do the extract version from title, it will go down through every track and extract that version that is whatever is in parentheses. The caveat is, in this particular case, loving her was easier, and then in parentheses, than anything I'll ever do. If you run that particular version extraction, it will call that as the version. So you gotta kind of watch your titles with that. All right. I'm sorry, I thought I had figured out how to see comments. So if you are commenting, I am not seeing them. So let's just keep moving on. I'm fairly certain this is broadcasting. I just can't see if you have any comments while I am presenting. So let's close this. We'll minimize that. All right. And is it done transferring? I believe so. So now let's open up the CATLive database. And we see we have the items that we did do a transfer on. So right now, all of this information is in that database. And I want to just do a compact. This kind of keeps the album base tidied up with that. And I'll show you why that's important. But I want to do this first. But I wanted a database that had a little bit of data to it, not a lot, but just enough. So if we look at database properties, we can see that this database is 40.88 megabytes, 38.99 megabytes. We'll go that easier number to remember, 38.99. And so that's all tidied up and things like that. But now, if after all that information to transfer over, let's delete it. And so since they are marked, we are going to go into Album, Delete Marked, and those will get deleted. And while that's working, we'll go back up here to CATraxx, right click, and then Control left click. We will open another session of CATraxx. And let's go and talk about sites. I showed you the sites.dat file that it's it's either in your program files folder with CATraxx or it's in your data. If you want, what you can do is copy it or cut and paste that .dat file over to your data folder. And at least what happened with me is CATraxx looks for it first in the program folder, can't find it, then it looks into the data folder. You can verify that when you do it, and if you have other experiences with that happening, let me know. That's been my experience. So I want to delete these tracks. So we're going to delete the media. Okay. Back to sites. You can create your own. There are some defaults that CATraxx does provide, but you do have the ability to create your own as new websites come up and websites change. The defaults, these are hard-coded into the CAT programs, and so you can't change them. These down here, and these are only on the home page. If you open up a particular form and then go to the sites, you'll just see those that are editable. Sites will edit, and so now we see our menu that we have access to. One of the default search phrases is ampersand, percent search percent. So you can, and search usually means in this particular case, artist title. If you're in BookCat, it's author title. And in CatVids, I believe it's just title. So there's some predetermined with the search, but you can also customize it down to particular fields in CATraxx or any of the other CAT ones. So if you want to search Discogs for just artist, percent artist percent is what's available. You can also break it down to just particular fields. So in this particular case, I use the issue field to search Google Books for a particular Billboard issue for my charts database. And so I search on album.issue with percent signs around it. And you don't have to have the variables. You can just have a pure bookmark, which I do have here. And then something that was talked about in the forum not too long ago was actually having files available. I have taken some old Billboard record research books and scanned them in for my own personal use so that I can then add the information from those books into my database. I've broken down the sites menu into various sections of CATraxx. I have an artist with multiple websites. Some of these may no longer even be available. It's just been that long since I've used them. But you pretty much can take any website that has a URL-based search and then make it your own. Album images. So if you're looking that the feature that downloads images isn't pulling the big enough images, because those images that CATraxx does download, and that's here, album download cover art, and that pulls from Discogs. If it doesn't have it, or you want a larger resolution, you can always go Images, Google Image, title cat number, and then you have the power of Google to find the particular image that you might want. Let's go back into the Sites menu. Also, for CATraxx, I also like to find the songwriters. So many of the repertoire websites have that ability to do a search for them. Some of them don't, like the one for Gemma. I believe that's the German repertoire search. Gets me to a particular page, and then I have to manually enter in the information. But some of the other sites have the ability to do the track title, and you can hopefully find the artist, the songwriters for those particular tracks. Lyrics websites, if you're looking for track information, I also have that broken down there. So you can really narrow down particular websites that you want to use. Right, so let's minimize that, and we're back to our CATLive database that we created. And so we deleted a lot of information here. And remember, our database prior was 38.99 megs. If we go into File, Database Properties, it actually grew because we deleted something. And that's just one of the quirks, so to speak, that the Jet engine has. That's why compact is important. So we just deleted a ton of stuff, but the database grew. So if we close and then do a File, Compact, then we go back to File, Database Properties, we're down to 9.31 megabytes. So compacting is important to kind of reclaim. Just because you delete something doesn't reclaim that file space back. So it's important to do that on a periodic basis, especially if you delete a large number of data. And actually, we still have more data that we could delete. So if we look at the lookup view for artist person, all of those artists that we brought in, all that information from those 2 transfers earlier into this new database are still in here. It doesn't delete those bits of information. So you want to kind of clean things up. If you go to Lookup, Show Unused Records, and it will mark all of the records. And if you look at our little list down below, there's 3,326 artists in this list that are no longer used in your database. So to clean things up, we'll go to Lookup, Delete Marked. So now it's letting us know that we're going to delete all of those, and this should go by fairly quickly. And remember, we were at, was it 9.3 megabytes? And so deleting 3,300 artists. View, oops, sorry. Database properties, and we're still at 9.31. So let's do a compact. And we're down to 5.98. So anytime you delete data, it doesn't allow the file system to reclaim your data space back, you need to do a compact to reclaim that. And keeps your database, I like to say, tidy, slim and trim. But it is important to do that, especially if you do some large data editing. All right, so we've talked about the compact, we've talked about sites menu. Last thing on my list today is under the tools options. And I thought we'd just kind of go over some of the basics with them. We talked about backup. This is where you can add the date and time to your backup file name, which I think is important to do. You don't want to always just have CATLive in this particular example as your name. You want to have some time frame differentiation. And keep multiple backups just on the off chance that, oh, that's right, that change that I made on Thursday, I really need to go back to Monday's backup and then start forward from there. And you also have the ability to do auto backup. That is, it will back up whenever you close CATraxx. For smaller collections, it works very well. Well, for large collections, it works well too. It just takes a while. So for me, I usually keep it off and then just back up on a predetermined basis in a quote unquote mental way. Next in the option list is capitalization. This is where you can, CATraxx by default will auto capitalize words as you type them. And you can kind of tweak that to your own preference. And you can add words that you don't want them to capitalize and take out. I believe it comes with even more than what's here, and I've removed those. These are the only ones that I don't want it to handle. And so that has some flexibility for you. If you click on the help, that does go into a little more detail on what each one does for you. Okay, help is very important. That feature I showed you before about exempting additional artists on other lines, I found that actually in help while I was looking up something else. I found that. Copy track data. For my use, I use this for songwriters. So many of the songs that people sing have usually been written by someone else, and they're already in my database. So I've created a particular copy track template that is just for the songwriters. And you can have a multitude of templates for copying track data. We won't go into the actual feature of it, but it's there. Data entry, a number of settings, again, for you to tweak to your own personal preference. Ignore when sorting. Ignore when sorting. We have the list there. Default folders. Earlier I showed you my file structure that I have, and so I take advantage of that in the default folders. So I put my files in a CATraxx files folder, images in an image folder, videos in a video folder, and then my audio files, because they are shared for playable among other programs, I put them in a particular folder for them as well. Default views. We have the ability to change your skins. I can't say what the other skins are, so well, you can try it there. So we have that. I prefer the 2000 blue. That's my go-to skin, but you can actually customize. I haven't done anything with that, so that's something if you're so inclined to play around with, go ahead. We have large buttons and small buttons, and I think at a earlier time when we had smaller monitors, this was okay. If we just do small buttons, and we'll just quickly do this. Okay, I'm going to close and reopen, and then notice how the button sizes are bigger than my mouse cursor. Close. Reopen. And now the buttons are really small. With a large monitor, I believe that to be just too small, unless real estate, your screen real estate was very important. I just prefer the large buttons with such large monitors nowadays. So let me go back to that. Close. Reopen. And it's the same with the other ones. You have some default views. I prefer to go to the album view. Some may prefer the Explorer view or the last view. And then we have the ability to save your last active record and then save your active filter grouping value. I like having it reopen back up to the record that I was on and not to the beginning record. Again, it's your preference. External applications, I don't have a lot in here. You can select your email program, your web browser, external imaging viewer, and the only one that I truly do care is when I edit Explorer templates. I use my Notepad++ that I talked about earlier. Some of your internet settings, you can check for program update. I don't check for program updates. You know, it's been a while. Still, DLLs will get updated. I have it set to not automatically download it. I want to make sure I have a backup before I do download it. Although it's highly probable that I do, it's just a double check for me. And I'm not sure why my Amazon is set to UK. But I have gone there and looked up things. So, but I'll reset my Amazon to USA. And some proxy information. Most people probably do not need to worry about this, but it's there for those that do need to use it. Our memo options, selecting your default font, font size, text color. Some miscellaneous. Here's where from last week's live session we talked about the status color coding. We can disable the alternate row coloring. You'll notice that there's this white and light blue alternating color. If you don't want that, you can turn it off. I like it, so I'll leave it on. You can also color code your titles that are on loan with CATraxx built-in loan tracking features. You can identify those that are on loan and then also those that are overdue. And then also the overdue warning upon checkout. Another feature in the miscellaneous that you can edit is the blank tracks. I want to see all the data that I can in this particular case, so I never hide my blank tracks. But you have the ability to have some flexibility with what blank tracks do you want to hide. And when I say blank tracks, those are the tracks that you have that tick box in there that are marked as blank. That's what that refers to. Then there is the separator multi-value fields. And when you have an artist with and other fields, it will, in my particular case, it will show the comma between them and the ampersand. And then you also have the ability to identify what do you want your checkboxes to look like in list views. And that is either a yes or no, or you could have it as an X and a dash. So when it's checked, it will say X. When it's not checked, it'll say dash. Or you could even have it blank. And so only when it's X will it be live or shown. And let me close out of this. Go back into my other CATraxx that is open. File. Close. I'm going to go into my regular database because the DJ field that I have is where I also take advantage of an X when it's checked, and when it's not checked, I just leave it blank. So I have promo with the DJ. So there is that. That particular one, yes, edit column. When you can customize it even on the view, that when it's checked, it's an X. All right, back to tools, options. Talk about multimedia. You can do your personal ratings. I personally don't have it, use it, but it is checked. It is there by default. Download from CDDB, scan folder. Storing images in the database or linked to images files. For myself, the vast majority of images are stored outside of my database just to keep things neat and tidy. There's been a couple of posts on the fans of FN programware that was questioning the database sizes and seeing how we can make them bigger. And because they were storing images in there, we could only go so big. And to store the images outside of the database is ideal. And we'll go through this in another session, but to auto-organize image files with some of these templates is preferred. Now, I have it ticked to store images in the database only for new albums. So as I add new albums from Discogs or whatever source, it will store the images in the database. And then what I do at regular intervals is then extract those images and store them outside of the database. Then I do a compact repair and keep the database as lean as I can. There's some other setups that you can do for multimedia players and scanner setups. We won't go into that. Reference number. This is something that some people do use. I don't particularly use it, but it has the ability to automatically add a number based on a criteria that you set up, whether it be the artist name or the album title. So if we looked at AC/DC, flick of the switch, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't know where my reference is. Did I go by it already? Yes, reference number down here. Because it's AC/DC, and this particular album was number 116 when it was added to the database. Some people use that for various storage purposes. It's totally up to the individual what they use. If you delete this number is not reusable unless you want to transfer to a new database, but then that resets a lot of other numbers. So sometimes you just got to have a gap in your numbering sequence. reports. This is for your default report margins and other settings. And then we have the various search filters. We could do the simple or advanced. And the toolbar search button is simple or advanced. We'll cover those in another session. And that is the options menu. And we are close to the 1 hour mark. I think I will stop there. And actually, we covered everything on my list for today. So thank you for all those that were watching. And if you do have any comments, please comment below the video. And any other questions that you do have, please let me know. And hopefully you have gathered some vast knowledge of the CAT programs, because many of these things are the ideas, the features are transferable to other of the programs. So from there, thank you for your time. Stay safe. Hope all is well, and wash your hands and keep on cat-logging. Yes, I know it's corny, but hey, it's fun. Take care. Thank you.